Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So there is a debate in the points and miles game about cents per point. Does it matter? Should you try to go for the highest cent per point possible? Or is getting free travel the most important? I see in the comment section on Facebook groups, YouTube, forums where people are debating cents per point. Well, in this video, I'm going to give my feelings about cents per point, and I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers for anyone who is very strongly on either one side or the other. Now, this video isn't directed at any person in particular. I see this debate all over the internet, and since I have a YouTube channel, I'm going to drop my feelings here on YouTube. Now, there's two major sides to this debate. There is the get the most cents per point that you possibly can side, where there's people who think that since you've earned these points, you should be looking at getting yourself outsized value for these points. And if you get anything less, you are a fool and you are wasting your points. Then there is the other major side, and this is a side that just doesn't want to pay any cash out of pocket. These are people who have collected points and miles, and all they want to do is be able to redeem them, whether it be for a cheap flight or for a vacuum. As long as they don't have to pay any cash out of pocket, it is a good deal to them. And since it is their points and miles, you can't tell them how to redeem them. Now, I think that most rational people only lean on either one side or the other, but when there are humans, you're going to have people who take things to the extreme. I've seen people who are on the get max value side talk about using their American Express Platinum card to buy a round-trip international in business class for them and their wife, where they spent $11,000. And from this $11,000 spend, they earned membership reward points. Now, with this membership reward points, they transfer them over to Virgin Atlantic during a 30% transfer bonus, giving them enough points to book a first-class one-way on ANA. The cost for a first-class seat on ANA one-way from the US over to Japan is going to be priced near about $13,000. So since this person spent $11,000 on their American Express Platinum card to earn enough points for this, in their mind, they were saying that it's like American Express is paying them because they're getting over 100% return for every dollar spent with their American Express Platinum card. Now, if you go off of the skewed math that this person is presenting, you could agree with what they're saying. But there's obviously some flaws in how they're presenting it. And this is honestly one of the reasons why when I first got into credit cards, I was turned off by the points and miles travel side because it can end up being somewhat misleading for how some people present it. So first, let's get into what many people will show you as the award flights sticker cost for a one-way flight. So what many people will do is they'll show you how much it will cost for a one-way flight, but what they don't tell you is that if you booked it as a round trip, the cost doesn't end up doubling from what you see as that one-way flight. This is why I try to put in the information of how much it would cost as a one-way, but then also how much it would cost as a round trip as well. Because chances are, most of us are not buying a first-class flight over to Tokyo to never return. Now, I've thought about it because the food over there is that good, but chances are this isn't gonna end up being the case for most people. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you look at booking yourself a business class flight one way over to Europe on Air France, chances are you're gonna see it somewhere near about $5,000. Now, when people hear that, automatically they think to themselves that a round trip would cost $10,000. But this isn't the case. A lot of the times, the round trip would end up being only like 20% more. So instead of it being $10,000 for a round trip in business class, it may end up being closer to like $6,000. Now, in some instances, it is more, but then there's also some instances that I've seen where if you end up booking as a one-way, it is actually more expensive than booking a round trip in business class. If you don't believe me, play around with Google Flights for a few minutes and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Also, the closer you are to departure, the more expensive it's going to be for that business class flight. And what are the two best ways for finding award space? It's going to be as far in advance as you can, or a couple weeks before the flight is going to take off. So if I make an award booking for a flight that's happening tomorrow, well, of course it's gonna be a lot more expensive for the ticket price than what it would be if I booked a flight for 5 months from now, which is when 90% of people who are gonna be making cash bookings will end up paying for this flight. And just because you got yourself a $13,000 first class seat, it doesn't mean that you saved $13,000. Now, I'm not gonna say that it isn't worth $13,000 because this is the sticker price, and even though I wouldn't spend that amount, there are businesses and wealthy people who will. I flew on Japan Airlines in first class and the entire cabin was full. And I realized that there were many real rich people in there with their Versace and Louis Vuitton suitcases, and I was one of the few people who was playing make-believe that I was as wealthy as these people on the flight home. These were definitely real wealthy people who paid a high sticker price for this first class flight to Los Angeles. But again, just because I got $13,000 in value, it doesn't mean that I saved $13,000. people who claim that they saved this amount of money are just doing that to try to sell you the lifestyle of points and miles. Because unless you are already actually going to be spending this amount for this flight, then you didn't actually save this amount of money. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't people who are saving this type of money. If you took a cruise over to Europe and then you wanted to take a business class flight home and you're going to pay for it regardless of having points or with cash, then you technically did save the sticker price that is listed. I've said to many people that the closest analogy I can come up with is that if someone offered you a Lamborghini, what is the most amount of money you would pay for it if you were never allowed to sell it or give it to someone else? We all know Lamborghinis cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but would you pay $90,000 for a Lamborghini that you couldn't sell or give away? Would you pay $80,000 for a Lamborghini that you couldn't sell or give away? You're getting an incredible discount on this Lamborghini, so why wouldn't you buy it for $90,000? The reason is because you don't value the Lamborghini at that price point. But if I told you the same thing with a house, saying that you could have a $400,000 house, but you would have to never be able to sell it or be able to give it away to anybody, how much would you spend on this? Would you spend $90,000? Would you spend $100,000? I bet you that there are many people who would jump on buying a house for $100,000 even if they could never sell it or give it away to anybody. And the reason for this is because most people will value a house over $100,000 even without the ability to be able to sell it. And if you truly believe that you're getting yourself close to $13,000 for this award flight, I won't do it because it's against the terms and conditions, but I bet you that there are many points brokers out there who would exchange 60,000 points for $6,000, which ends up being less than half the cost of what you claim you were getting. One of my biggest pet peeves for people who are max cents per point is that they only see it as being a good deal when the price is high. But what if the ticket price is low? What if I made an award booking for a first class flight, but instead of the sticker price being $10,000, it's closer to $4,000? Is this still a good deal? I'm talking about being the exact same plane on the exact same day, in the exact same seat, requiring the same amount of points. Is this still a good deal? People who are so fixed on cents per point would probably lose interest in this first class award booking because they wouldn't be able to brag to people what an amazing deal that they got. These same people would probably begin to start talking down about this airline and claim that it's not as good as it used to be because all that matters to them is the sticker price that is connected with the flight, not the actual experience itself. These people would be the same people where if they ate at a Michelin star restaurant, they would say that the food is absolutely incredible, but if you grab that same Michelin star chef, put them in a local mom and pop restaurant, have them grab the same exact food and the same exact menu, cut the price to a tenth of what they charge at the Michelin star restaurant, and then have these people eat at this restaurant, they may tell you that it's good, but it's subpar compared to that fancy schmancy Michelin star restaurant that they ate at before. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that there should be a metric to measure how much value we are getting for our points, but I don't believe that cents per point is the end all be all. Now, if all you care about is the best cents per point, have at it. But if you really want to have the best cents per point, why don't you choose a flight that has 14 different connections and you get to be at the airport in the sky for 116 hours, even though the original destination is only a 2-hour drive from where you wanted to go. See how much each individual business class flight would have cost if you made their bookings 10 hours before their departure, and then grab all that collective cost, but add in a 150% transfer bonus that you got from Bilt Rewards to make these award bookings. And that's going to be your cents per point. I hope you end up seeing that this entire collective system that people end up using for their cents per point can end up becoming stupid. Now that's just the extreme cents per point people. Let's look at the other side, and these are the people who just want to get themselves free things for their points. Every time I hear someone say that they got themselves a free hotel room or a free flight, it annoys me a little bit because none of this stuff is free. Free is that beer that random guy at the bar gave you because you're just happy at the end of the night. Free is going to be the leftovers at the garage sale that if you don't end up taking it, they're just gonna throw it away. But when you end up getting yourself a flight or a hotel room, you aren't getting these for free because you're redeeming points to get them. The problem with the free mindset is that points and miles have a value and they are a currency. The same way that Mexican pesos is a currency, British pounds is a currency, and US dollars is a currency. Now, miles and points trade at different rates than dollars, but you trade them for goods or seats and hotel stays. When you use a credit card, for an easy example like a Delta Airlines credit card, you are essentially buying miles each time you use it. The reason for this is because credit cards are pretty much a rebate card. You get paid to use your credit cards. And when you use your Delta credit card, you forfeit the money that you would have been earning. Instead, you end up buying Delta Sky Miles in place of it. If you find the Delta Sky Miles that you earn to be worth more than the cash that you could have been earning, then it makes sense to have the Delta credit card. But if you don't, then you should have yourself a cashback credit card instead. Once you understand that earning points and miles with a credit card is essentially just buying these points and miles at a discounted rate, the question you need to ask yourself is it worth it? The thing about cashback cards is that many of them earn at higher rates than points and miles cards. If you can have a cashback setup that can earn you $200 in cashback, or you could have a point setup that earns you 15,000 points, the point setup only makes sense if you can get yourself a decent amount more in value than $200. The reason is because outside of the world of points and miles, you wouldn't trade $200 in cash for a $150 Target gift card to buy yourself a new chair. This would end up being a terrible deal on your side. You also wouldn't buy a $200 gift card at Target for yourself unless there was some type of deal connected to it. Because what would be the point of doing that? Now, if Target was offering you a $220 gift card for $200, then you may end up wanting to exchange this if you knew you could end up spending that for that time you're visiting Target. But I have a Target that isn't very far from me, and if I walked in and they told me that they could give me a $220 gift card for $200 in cash, unless I knew I was going to be spending $200 in cash that day, chances are I wouldn't end up exchanging that, because not only would I rather have the $200 in cash, there may end up being things that I want to buy that are at Target that are more expensive at Target. And if I had the $200 in cash, I could buy the same exact item for maybe half the price at Walmart instead. It's not that I don't see the potential of the $20 additional that I could be getting with Target. It's just that I understand how much more versatile my actual dollars are. Now, the problem that I have with many of the all I want to do is not pay cash people is that I wonder, why are you okay with getting less for your credit card spend if you don't have to? What I mean by this is that if you are redeeming your points for 1.5 cents per point or less on average, if you end up looking at getting yourself a cashback setup, you probably can earn the equivalent value of your cash out rate in cash. And instead of having to use it on travel, you could use it on either travel, or you could use it on a goofy hat, bachata classes, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or whatever you want to use it on. You can be a person on team travel with an entire cashback setup. When I first began traveling, I had an entire cashback setup that worked out great for me for all my domestic economy travel needs. I know people who've redeemed their United miles for golf equipment. Now, United miles are typically worth somewhere near about like 1.3 cents per point in value, but when you redeem for merchandise like golf equipment, it's going to be under 1 cent per point in value. But the person who was redeeming these miles did not care. All they wanted to do was not pay out of pocket, and they felt that they were winning. But they really weren't, because if they had a cashback setup to begin with, they could have purchased all the same exact merchandise and still had cash left over. The airlines and banks want us to redeem our points and miles for less value than they are worth. This is the reason why American Express offers the ability to redeem your points for 0.6 cents per point, because every time you do that, they win. The best analogy I can give for the all I want to do is not pay out of pocket people is, imagine a child has a $5 bill and all they want to do is get themselves a candy bar. So they go into a grocery store, they pick up a Snickers bar, they hand the $5 bill over to the clerk, and then they run out super happy. Now, the child is happy that they got themselves a candy bar, but anyone who understands money knows that there should have been change given back to the child. And if the child even looked into the deals going on, the child could have gotten themselves 3 candy bars. Now, if you tell this to the child and the child doesn't care, you feel bad for the child, because although the child did get what they wanted, the child is losing out and they didn't even have to. This is how the people who understand the value of points look at the people whose main objective is just not to pay any cash in a pocket. They understand that you're getting what you want, but you could be getting more, so why settle for less? Now, I understand that it does take time and effort to learn the value and also how to get more from your points. And a lot of people don't want to put in that time and effort, but many cases, it's not even going to be that much time or effort that would be required. And unless you're someone who's making a lot of money per hour, chances are it's going to be worth your time to put in the additional work. So does cent per point matter? Well, the answer is yes, but I don't think that it's the most important. I think that the most important is going to be getting and doing what you want. Then the next most important thing, very close behind, is going to be figuring out the best and cheapest way to obtain this. Now, how do I look at my points? Well, I see my points at being what the cash rate would be at. And since the base level value that I cash out any of my points would be at 1 cent per point, then I see my points being valued at 1 cent per point. Now I know that the high cents per point people are probably thinking, but you should be valuing it much more than that because you're going to be able to get yourself way more value than that. I understand. Hear me out. If I decide to become a cashback person and I'm just completely done with traveling, well, now I know the base level value for my points. Now this is not something that I foresee happen, but say the worst comes to worst happens in my life and I need to cash in my points, or there ends up being an incredible investment opportunity and I need this additional cash to make this investment. This is the lowest I would cash at my points. Now, since I decided to go the points and miles route as compared to having a cashback setup, I should be looking at getting myself at the very least 2 cents per point when redeeming my points. The reason for this is because, like I said earlier, if I had a cashback setup, I could earn additional cash back that would end up giving me the equivalent of if I ended up having a points to miles setup and only cashed out my points at 1.5 cents per point. The difference is that I would have cash back instead of having points to miles that's only stuck to be redeemed for travel. What I a lot of times like to do is see all the different things I can get after I get above that 2 cents per point. So the sticker price becomes irrelevant as soon as I get above that price point. So what do I mean by this? Well, I know that you can get yourself a business class flight from the east coast of the US over to Europe on Iberia for 34,500 miles. If you have 350,000 points, well then you know that you can get yourself 5 times round trip in business class from the east coast of the US over to Europe. Now, if you want to do it on Air France charges 50,000 flying blue miles to get yourself a business class flight. So you could get yourself 3.5 round trip flights in business class over to Paris. Now I realize that not everyone is looking for a business class flight or to travel internationally. There are economy seats that can give you decent value as well. The reason why so many people in the points and miles game talk about international flights or premium seats is because they are way more expensive and they can give you a higher return for your points. So while a business class flight over to Madrid from New York may end up costing 34,000 miles, there are many places in America when you fly economy that are going to cost you 34,500 United miles. Both are requiring the same amount of points, but one of them is in economy and one of them is in business class. One of them costs a few $100s, and one of them costs a few $1,000s. I know most Americans are going to be traveling within America as compared to internationally, but it is very interesting to think that you're going to be spending the same amount of points for a clearly inferior and cheaper product. When we were kids, there used to be this giveaway with Toys R Us where they let children have a cart, run through their store, and then put whatever they could in their cart and they were able to take that home. Whether they wanted to have the most expensive item or an item that they would play with the most. As a kid, I remember thinking if I ever won, I would want to choose the most valuable item that I would play with a lot. I may play with a deck of cards more than anything else, but if I could scrap together a few soda cans, I could buy one of those myself. And while the telescope may be crazy expensive and cool to look through, as a 7-year-old, I probably would have more fun showing it off to people that I have a $5,000 telescope as compared to looking through it all day, every day. I'm someone who didn't get on a plane for the first time until I was in my mid-20s. So being able to travel around the world for incredibly cheap using points and miles is something that I never imagined I'd be able to do as a child. And for those of you who stayed to the end, who I didn't offend, take cool trips. Go explore, because the older I get, the more I realize that time moves a lot quicker than I previously thought it did. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts about cents per point? Now, if you happen to have any questions about cents per point, also drop that in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer it. If you happen to realize this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day.